there's about a 50-50 chance that the AI project you're looking at right now gets shelved before it makes a single dollar. At least half of all generative AI projects are abandoned after the proof of concept. And that's according to Gartner. So not a skeptic blog, not a vendor with something to sell you, Gartner. Firms are spending money on AI. Vendors are presenting, pilots are running, and then they stall. Not because the AI itself failed, but because the conditions around it were wrong from the start. Gardner identified three primary causes. Number one, poor data quality. Number two, unclear business value. And number three, inadequate controls. These aren't exotic problems, they're operational failures, and they're predictable. These problems are more common in professional services than any vendor will admit. Most firms I talk to can tell me exactly what their AI project is supposed to do, but very few can tell me what it's supposed to change, how they know it worked, or what they'll do if something goes wrong. And that gap is exactly where projects fail. The most common failure isn't bad AI, it's a bad data model. AI doesn't fix broken processes, it just amplifies them. If your data is messy, incomplete, or scattered across many systems, the AI output will be too. There's a documented case of a global engineering firm that spent 18 months building a predictive risk modeling system, and they abandoned it. Why? Well, because more than half their project data was still on paper. The digital records were full of duplicates and old errors, and the AI couldn't do anything useful with it. That's a large organization, but the exact same principle holds for a $10 million professional services firm. If your time entries aren't complete, if your project codes are applied inconsistently, if your ERP has gaps your team navigates around every month, you have a data quality problem, and any AI built on top of that will reflect every one of those gaps. The research is consistent on this. Firms that clean their data before they build produce results. Firms that assume that AI will sort out their mess don't. It's as simple as that. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a reason to wait for perfect data, but it is a reason to be honest about what's clean before you start. And start in the clean zone. Get your first result there, and then tap on the harder data problems with the credibility that that first win gives you. The next problem is unclear business value. Most AI projects start with technology and not with a problem. You see a demo, something looks compelling, a project gets approved, but you haven't answered one question. What specific outcome are you measuring? Better visibility isn't measurable, but reducing the invoice cycle from 14 days to 7 is. Improve efficiency is not a target, but recover 5% of unbilled hours in 90 days is. Without a measurable definition of success, your project ends up in what research calls pilot purgatory. It runs, demos happen, and it's described as a lot of promise, but it never connects to the P&L. So when the next budget cycle arrives, it gets cut, obviously. This pattern shows up consistently across the research. Qualitative wins don't survive budget pressure, because that's what they are, abstract. And at some point, somebody's going to ask, what did this actually change? If you can't answer that with a quantifiable benefit, the project is exposed. The firms that define success up front look very different. They can name the metric they're moving. They run the pilot against that metric, and they know whether it's on track. So the fix is simple. Before you start, write down the metric. Baseline today, give yourself a target and a timeline. And if you can't do that clearly, the project isn't ready. That's not a problem with the AI, that's a problem with the brief. The third cause is a lack of controls. And by controls, I don't mean IT governance or documentation. I mean practical answers to practical questions. Who reviews the output before it affects a client or a payment? What happens when the AI goes wrong? How do you catch a bad output before it compounds into a bigger problem? Your business operates in risk-sensitive environments. We're talking about legal, accounting, architecture, consulting. A single bad output can damage your client relationship, or worse, create compliance issues. Don't get me wrong, that's not a reason to avoid AI, but it is a reason to design it right. And again, the research is direct on this. AI built inside controlled workflows with clear inputs and auditable outputs is more likely to deliver real results. In practice, this means reviewing the invoice batch before it goes out, approving time entry suggestions before they're finalized. You know exactly where in the workflow a person is in the loop. If you built something where AI makes a decision without human review, that project is super fragile and super risky. One visible error and the business case collapses. Design for human review at the points that matter. Build in approval steps where errors cause real damage. And treat controls as part of the product from day one, not as an afterthought or added when something goes wrong. The firms that do get past the proof of concept stage share a pattern. They start narrow. One workflow, one metric, one clearly identified outcome before building anything. They do the data work first. Not because they're waiting for perfect data, but because they've identified what's reliable and build inside those boundaries. The harder data problems come later when there's a win to point to. They keep a human in the loop at the points where real business risks exist. Not because they don't trust the AI, but because the controls are what allows the project to scale. And they measure relentlessly. They can show whether a project is going to hit the target metric. None of this requires large technology budgets. It requires the same operational discipline that makes any process improvement project work. The difference with AI is that the cost of skipping these steps is faster and more visible than with most process changes. So before you approve any AI initiative, ask yourself 3 questions. Do you have a clean enough data to build on? Can you define the specific outcome you're measuring? And have you designed for human review at the right points? If any of those answers is no, fix that first. Look, and if you find this useful, please do subscribe. I post a video like this every week.